Hello and welcome to this session of Bringing Law to Life at the Open University Law School. My name is Wynette and I have a number of roles here in the Open University Law School. I'm the head of EDIA, I'm a student experience manager, and I'm also an associate lecturer. And this evening I'm joined by my colleague, Associate Lecturer Denis Healy, and by also a colleague. This is our Open University Law School intern, Rebecca Zamet, who's going to bring us through a conversation with Denis about the role of law in his professional life. So thank you, Denis and Rebecca, for joining us, and thank you for joining us this evening. This is one of 5 events in a series of conversations from the law school. You can sign up for the remainder of the events this month, or indeed you can watch the recording. Now, we're running these events because the legal profession recognises the value of diversity and inclusion, but it's been a little bit slow to take steps to foster a more inclusive environment. And equity, diversity and inclusion, it is also a regulatory objective that's recognised in the law. And the law states it encourages an independent, strong, diverse and effective legal profession. But the stats say there's only a slow but steady increase in diversity amongst lawyers. So overall, 53% of women lawyers, 19% Black and minority ethnic lawyers, and 6% of lawyers with disabilities. So there's also that significant seniority gap that also exists in the legal statistics here on diversity. So we know there's a significantly higher proportion of lawyers who work in one partner firms than any other firm. And there are statistics also relating to lesbian, gay and bisexual lawyers who only make up 4.4% of the legal profession. And lawyers from lower socioeconomic backgrounds has actually been reducing as the years go on. In 2015, that was 21%. In 2023, just 18% of lawyers came from a lower socioeconomic background. The Bar Council has also found evidence of barristers from ethnic minority backgrounds facing systemic obstacles to building and progressing a career at the bar. And more recently, their report on diversity shows that there are still significant disparities for underrepresented groups. And this series of talks aims to increase awareness and understanding of not only the obstacles, but also the opportunities and the support available for our students from underrepresented groups entering the legal profession. So before we begin with this conversation between Rebecca and Denis, I'm just going to remind you that you can use the question and answer box to post any questions. And if these are not answered in the session, they will be answered on the forum for this particular conversation that you will find on Law Study Home. And before you leave today, please do complete the feedback questionnaire that I will post the link to at the end of our conversation. So that's all from me. Taking it away now will be Rebecca and Denis. Welcome to both of you.
Thanks, Wynette. Just a small admin task before we begin. The chat function is actually disabled on the meeting, so people won't be able to pop questions in that question and answer box, which I believe was the way that it was formatted.
Is the Q&A box open?
I will double check that.
Yes, Q&A box is open, so you can put your questions in our Q&A box. Thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you, Wynette. Sorry, that's my misunderstanding there. Thank you. But maybe there were others who had read it the same way as me. So hopefully that was helpful to somebody for my mistake there. Thank you. Hi, Denis. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. It's a real pleasure to have you with us. We've got, Wynette did the most fabulous introduction there to all of the incredible work that she and the team do in the law school around expanding ideas and looking at the legal profession in terms of EDIA. So you've had what I think a journey that I'm sure a lot of OU students would identify with, that it's very much not been linear. And you've had a journey into your current profession that looks more like a squiggle than a straight line. Is that a fair assessment, Denis?
Yes, thanks, Rebecca, and thanks, Vanette, for inviting me to do this session and share my thoughts with you this evening. Yes, that's a fair description. I have been an associate lecturer, as you say, for about 8 years now, I think 7 years, 8 years with the Open University. And my own journey actually started as a mature student, which is something that interests me greatly. I started my career path as a telecoms technician at a time. I'm obviously, as you gather from my accent, I'm from the south of Ireland, at a time when economically and so on, it wasn't the jobs market wasn't very good. Family circumstances dictated that I didn't really have the opportunity to go to college. And as I came towards the end of my 20s, when technology was taking a lot of the thought process out of being a technician and so on, I decided to study law. I had a choice of studying English, which I was really interested in studying, or studying law. And I did it without any particular path in mind. You know, we were comfortable. I'd been recently married. We had our house. I hadn't any great plans to do anything with it. But nevertheless, so it was back in the days of face-to-face lectures. I went 2 years, 3 nights a week. I went 2 years, 4 nights a week, and I still wasn't satisfied after that. I went on and did my master's, which I spread over 2 years. So that led me to a point where I was exhausted, and I was kind of into my 30s at that stage, my mid-30s, and I was kind of thinking, yeah, I'll just kind of continue on what I'm doing. That was an exciting path. But what I want to, 2 points I want to make to the students that are with us is that, number one, probably the question I'm asked most is about being a mature student. You're never too late to enter the law professions and to use your degree, no matter what age you are. I'd emphasize. I'm in my mid-60s now, and I teach in the Law Society as well. And I very frequently see people training to be solicitors who are still older than I am now. So that's a very important takeaway that I want to emphasize in this session, is that, maturity is just an age, it's just a number. And it was brought home to me when I qualified, because at that stage I was into my 40s, and I was kind of saying to people, well, I'm kind of too late now to go into practice or whatever. And somebody very usefully pointed out to me that, I was newly qualified. And somebody pointed out to me, if a client wanted advice from a solicitor, would they go to somebody who was 22, 23, with no disrespect obviously intended for people who are 22 or 23, recently qualified, no life experience, or somebody in their 40s who had considerable life experience? And that kind of brought it home to me. Yeah, clearly, you can't, there's no substitute for experience, even if it wasn't specifically in the practice in law. And so just to mention very briefly, I've been very fortunate. I spent 10 years in commercial law, specialising particularly in all aspects of commercial law, but particularly intellectual property. And from my time when I started studying, I liked writing and drafting and so on. So I was very fortunate to have the opportunity to go and work in the Attorney General's office in Dublin as a parliamentary draftsperson, which I would still be happily doing, only that I had full service and had an opportunity to retire early. I still work as an independent contractor, doing that as well as the teaching work I do. And it is, when you study law, it's all about finding your niche. I mean, I'm a bit of a I have a bit of a penchant for cliches, and this one that, if you enjoy what you're doing, you'll never again work a day in your life. And nothing is truer, actually. That's just, I could have happily worked another 10 years in the attorney's office, but it just didn't really make economic sense for me to continue on working full time when I was in a position to retire. So I've touched a few ideas there, Rebecca. Feel free to ask any specific questions or whatever occurs. And sorry, have I gone on a little bit too long there?
No, you're absolutely fine, Denis. That's absolutely fine. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I think that really does emphasise, like you say, that mature students can bring such an incredible and unique lens to the work that they go on to do when they've graduated and qualified, as you did in your case. Thank you. As Juanette talked about at the beginning, we know that the legal profession remains relatively exclusive still, and still a challenge to break into, and isn't fully reflective of the demographic of the society that we all find ourselves in today. would you say that you have found, particularly as your role as a public servant within working in the law, do you feel that that element of your profession has been a more diverse place to work, or less so than when you were working in a firm?
Certainly, unusually, the office I worked in, I think there were about roughly 32, 33 Parliamentary Counsel working in the office when I was working there, of which 4, maybe 5 of us. I think there was 5 men, and the balance were females. So certainly, the public service is a very, very diverse office. They've got great policies, and they encourage they encourage people from all backgrounds and no backgrounds. If that's not a bit of a cliche, perhaps the nature of the work. I think perhaps maybe some people prefer it more than others. Maybe it's not a type of work that would appeal to men generally, and it was the type of work that if you liked it, you loved it, or if you weren't that enthusiastic about it, it certainly wasn't a job for you, because people who didn't like the job found things like proofreading and so on very, very difficult. Whereas I'll happily work with a 2-page document on the screen all day long, or I'll happily work proofreading a 200-page document. So again, just to emphasize and bring this back to, I suppose, the purpose of discussion, it's about finding your niche and finding what works for you, because when people, when you say you're studying law, people automatically think, oh, solicitor or barrister, but there are just so many other opportunities and avenues that it opens up, and particularly students during their studies should keep a very open mind as to what they intend to do, because again, as I say, I didn't know when I studied law that I wanted to be a solicitor. Even when I was doing my dissertation, I was very fortunate to have a fantastic professor supervising me, who I would meet him every 3 weeks or thereabouts right through the semesters. And he would always say to me, he said, you just have one choice. Is it a solicitor or a barrister you want to be? And he, I say, no, I'm grand. I'm kind of happy enough where I am, and so on. So I suppose that brings me just to mention that, you have to watch out for your mentors and listen to them as well. I was delighted a year or two ago to meet the gentleman who was long retired now, and just to thank him again for, making me the person I am and give me the opportunities that I got along the way, because you need that kind of encouragement as well, to kind of step out of your comfort zone.
And it can be a long road, can't it, Denis, from beginning your degree, particularly if you're studying part-time. You may have done your undergraduate degree across 6 years and then taken another couple of years, even if you're able to move straight into kind of a trainee, legal trainee role. It still takes some time, doesn't it, to reach qualification. Another question that I'm just thinking about is whether you would have viewed your work when you were working in commercial law, your kind of work-life balance in that role versus your work-life balance in the role before you went into kind of the contract sort of setup work that you're doing now when you were employed as a drafter. How would you say the two compared in terms of work-life balance?
I don't know. I suppose sorry, Rebecca, just for answer that question, just to speak about the long road point. Again, yet another cliche. Every long road starts with one step. And when I started studying first year, I was hoping to get the diploma in second year, and then you get your diploma, and then I was hoping to get the degree, and so on. So you have to take it a step at a time. So that's very, very important to realise. Work-life balance is challenging. Fortunately, I think there is more emphasis on work-life balance now. Obviously, the work-life balance in a commercial environment was quite different from the work-life balance I enjoyed as a public servant. Rather unfortunately, and I might be oversharing a little bit here, is that I tend to be a bit of a workaholic, and I tend to work late and so on and so forth. And not because I want to earn extra money or whatever, but I really do enjoy what I do. But, as society is changing largely at the same time that the majority of trainee solicitors, for instance, want to get into the high-flying commercial firms, doing mergers and acquisitions and all that, high-paid, long hours work. Nevertheless, there are increasing opportunities for people to kind of take a more sedate lifestyle with, hybrid working and, trying to find a firm that has a different culture, that you don't necessarily have to work those outrageous hours. Rather odd statistic is that of last year's cohort of trainee solicitors in Ireland, 90% of the solicitors or the trainee solicitors were working in commercial firms, to the extent that in firms around the rest of the country, like the average age of a solicitor in a rural practice in Ireland is about over 45 now. Young trainee solicitors don't want to go into those type of practices anymore, which is terrible for people who live in the countryside and rural areas and the availability of services to them. And I understand that the direction of travel in England and Wales is quite the same as well. So not sure if I quite answered your question or not, but hopefully that's kind
really
of a flavour of
helpful,
my
Denis.
thoughts.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think I definitely would say that it appears to be reflected in England and Wales that certainly it's where the big salaries are, even for trainees, is within those kind of top magic circle firms that are very much focused on mergers and acquisitions, commercial law, all of that kind of work. And it's those kind of age-old challenges where if you're interested in more human-centred work, perhaps criminal law or family law, those kind of areas, which we see many more women working in those areas, and they're long-standing, significantly lower paid. And that's certainly a balance that I would love to see redressed. And I think, would you say that sometimes the progress can feel slow in the legal profession in terms of diversity? I think sorry, I've asked a question, then carrying on. I appreciate that, Denis, apologies. Something that I've observed is that the OU, they have a really, really broad outlook on what they would deem as somebody that needs some support or is lacking in equity and therefore deserving of some equitable measures put into place. I'm a carer, and I received a carer's scholarship to study my degree with the OU, but I'm not finding that necessarily translates out there in the more commercial world, even in a law firm that does do those kind of more human-centred legal work, like family law, for example. There's still very much a very commercial element to the work, and commercial awareness is still a really big theme across all firms, regardless of the work that they do. And I'm finding that actually it's not necessarily translated, those kind of tenets of the OU. I'm struggling to find those in the right place for me that would enable me to access a career in an early career pathway. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, in my time, and I suppose my experience is largely in the Irish environment, although I am admitted in England and Wales. But nevertheless, things have changed dramatically in many ways, even in my time in the 20 plus years, close to 25 years now, since I qualified, with regard to diversity, with regard to arrangements. I mean, even the COVID pandemic, unfortunate and all as it was for all of us, actually has changed the dynamic quite a bit and allows the facility of remote working kind of accepted that. And there certainly was a culture of the office I worked in, and I don't in the attorney's office, and I don't mean this in any critical way of, you had to be in the office 9 to 5 days a week, and there was no question of remote working, there was no facilities. And then within 6 months that thinking had been completely dispensed at when the pandemic happened, unfortunately. Rather oddly, my retirement date, as it happened, was 5 weeks before the country went into national lockdown, which is rather unfortunate to have a retirement date.
Oh, Denis, no party for you.
No, there wasn't actually, and I didn't even clear my desk until the end of 2020. Even the papers on my desk weren't sorted for nearly 12 months. But going back to the core of your question, again, because I've been teaching in the Law Society since I qualified. I mean, the cohort of students that I've been seeing in the Law Society has changed so much from a diversity point of view, and the reasonable adjustments that they're making. I mean, we're very familiar, all of us. I think the OU is fantastic from the way that it manages people with particular requirements. It usedn't to be that I usedn't ever hear going into a class in the Law Society, well, there's somebody in your class that you have to make this reasonable adjustment for, or even being told that a person has a condition, perhaps a medical condition or other a particular requirement, and that has changed dramatically, particularly over the last 10 years. And again, I don't want to necessarily say that the Law Society weren't looking after their trainees, but it's certainly far more visible to me now as a teacher, because I'm not in practice as such in a day-to-day basis. It's certainly more visible to me that account is being taken, which is great to see. As to whether that is as visible in commercial firms who essentially, I suppose, are businesses and are driven by business considerations very often. I certainly would like to think that it is the case that culture is more widespread.
That's great. Thank you so much, Denis. And you mentioned a little bit about some specific role models and mentors that you'd had. That was just the other question I wanted to ask you. So thank you for already addressing that for us. That was really useful.
Okay.
I'll just see if Juanette wants us to go to any of the questions and answers, or if she's happy for us to carry on chatting.
Happy to carry on with the questions you have for Denis now. Thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you so much, Juanette. So I've got some slightly more specific questions for you, Denis, if that's okay.
That's fine. Ask me anything.
Wonderful, thank you. What advice do you think you would give to students who are trying to overcome hurdles around accessibility and trying to find that way into the profession, particularly when they feel that they are bringing with them a need for some adjustments or a need for some understanding? Any advice that you'd give to students for the way they could approach that?
Well, I suppose the starting point, and you know, we've all, or in my own time, and everybody faces this challenge that if you don't have contacts within the law profession, it can be quite difficult to access. So I suppose folding in your particular question, maybe I might just speak about perhaps you know, what students should do while they are students, to explore the opportunities that their studies may present to themselves, if only perhaps to discover that maybe one might decide, you know, if you get experience working in a solicitor's firm over the summer, maybe one might decide that that's not the particular route you want to take. So I certainly would be creating the networks, even speaking about my professor, and all along my career path, I was fortunate to meet people that I worked with, and you know, who were very kind to me, and you know, helped me out with support, be it of whatever nature, and helped me with my questions and so on. It might surprise those of you who are students to know that most of us who teach don't actually do it because it's a job. Most of us do it because being part of the law is being part of a continuum. And in my time, people helped me out and gave me information. And now I feel it's incumbent on me to pass it on to the students that I teach. And that's why I actually started teaching in the Law Society almost as soon as I was qualified. And very often I did it in years where I had to take time off work, use up my annual leave, etc., etc. So I suppose more specifically, how does a student, and particularly if they have particular requirements, how do they reach out and how do they get that experience and so on? So what I would say is that a student should start obviously with the university and with the network that's built into with the university. You know, you've got the Careers Office, you've got the University Law Society, you've got the Students' Union. And I might speak in a moment, if time permits, about some ideas about how maybe one might improve their CV and make their applications and stand out, because it's very,
Please do, Denis. Yes.
Okay, it's very, thank you. It's very important to, you know, to stand out and kind of establish and kind of think ahead, and how will you be different from this vast volume of applications that are coming into the a firm every week, you know. And now with the advent of AI, you know, which are spewing out CVs and cover letters and so on and so forth for people, you know, firms I'm hearing are just seeing these coming in at an alarming rate. So you kind of have to think what you need to do, particularly if you've got special requirements, so that you look different from all those rest of those applications. So I would encourage students early to get engaged with the network that they have, be it OCLs, be it other people in other parts of the university. The Careers Office, I mentioned the Law Society of the OU Law Society. I think that's the name of it, isn't it? And
That's right, yeah.
the Students' Union, etc., etc. I mean, LinkedIn is out there, and I'm sure everybody's got a profile on LinkedIn. I'm not entirely sure how helpful that is to stand out from the crowd and so on. What I would encourage students to do is get experience anywhere you can.
Okay.
If you know a solicitor's firm, maybe send them a nice letter saying, I'm a student. I would like to get some experience. I'd be happy to come and work as an intern. If you've got some specific needs or requirements that you would set out in the letter to them. And, you know, us solicitors, and maybe I can't speak for all solicitors, but we tend to be a group of people that like to encourage students and like to pass on our wisdom and give people opportunities and so on and so forth. So as well as that, the other avenue I'd be looking at is, you know, you students are learning very valuable information. You're building up a great corpus of knowledge, which is really, really useful. So you should be talking to your community law centres or community advice centres, free legal aid centres, perhaps even consider if you should be preparing a few guest lectures for your local college. Approach the college if they give you that. And these are all the kind of things then that makes your CV, your application stand out from the rest. And don't ever forget to fold in, never see any particular requirements that you have as a disadvantage to your application. Just see it as something that needs to be mentioned because it needs perhaps reasonable adjustment.
Fact.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And
I agree.
and trust me, you know, people in law are very open-minded. They don't view a letter that mentions this in other than with pure objectivity. And you know, it's just another aspect of the person, the same as the color of their eyes or whatever it might be. That things. And then if you do get an opening, if you get an opportunity to be an intern for a week or whatever, very important to do the fundamentals well. You know, if you get an opportunity, don't waste it or flitter it away, even if it's just putting. Sorry, I don't mean to be disrespectful when I say this, but even if it's just enveloping and going to the post office or whatever, make sure you do that well because. You know, again, some of the advantages, some of these opportunities that I'm talking about is to be able to get a reference as well from somebody. So if you go and if you're seen as somebody who's willing and capable and willing to do it well and interested and so on, it's very, very important that you do it properly because the best takeaway you can for any of these short-term placements is a reference. And then, you know, think outside the box, think about other opportunities. Have you got a particular interest in a particular topic? Would it be worth writing an article and submitting it to a few law journals or blogs or whatever? All these things are what makes you different from all those other applications that go in. Maybe be the student rep, maybe organize a speaking event for students for your study group or whatever. Reach out and join bar associations. Most bar associations welcome students and are delighted. And very often they don't even charge you a membership fee to be a student member or to be an associate.
It's very low, perhaps just £20 a year or something. Some of them are, And some of those bar associations, they've got the kind of the regional circuits as well. So depending on where you live, you told Denis you were across the waters there in Ireland. So finding your local one. Would you say that's a good idea too?
I think it's an absolute, definitely a good idea, Rebecca. I'd agree entirely because, again, you know, it is meeting people, it's getting exposure, it's getting a feel for the law, it's getting a reputation as somebody who is interested. Because it's important to realise that, you know, employers and people who offer training contracts and so on, they're not necessarily looking for the best person, the absolute outstanding star, because, you know, very often the best person is the person in the office when you go to court, that they leave the file on the desk or do something silly like that, you know. They want good, practical, capable, enthusiastic people who will fit with the culture of their particular business, who they can rely on to do the basics really, really well, who are dependable, and that's an important aspect of it as well.
That's really great advice. Take every opportunity you can get and do it all with good grace and to the best of your ability.
And create the opportunities as well. Don't wait for the opportunities to arrive to you. Think outside the box, yeah.
So helpful. Thank you, Denis. That's brilliant. Juanette, would you like me to pass back to you now? I'm just conscious of our time slot. I feel like I could pick Denis's brain for such a long time.
Indeed, we feel the same way, because Denis has had such an interesting legal journey, not only from practice, but then into working into a legal draftsman, and all having done that, having come to law later on in life, which, chimes with many of our student body. Thank you, Rebecca, and thank you, Denis. Can I have a big round of applause for you this evening? Thank you very much for joining us, and thank you, Denis, for sharing. Denis. Rebecca, thank you so much for such wonderful conversational hosting skills. We haven't any questions yet in the Q&A pod, but from Stella, we have, nice to see you, Denis, again. I've just finished my LLB after 6 years part-time, just finished modules W330 and W340. Phew. Thanks, Denis. You weren't my tutor, but gave very helpful tutorials. Thank you, from Stella. Stella, congratulations also on finishing your degree, and I hope you have found this conversation with Denis as helpful as his other tutorials. So I'm just going to bring up on the slide now a couple of slides to talk about our career resources that are available for our law students here at the Open University. So if you go to our careers and employability page, you will find many law-specific resources, and that's available through your Law Study Home website. Here you can get information and advice directly related to your careers when you have your law qualification, but we also have the Careers and Employability Services on the Help Centre. And here you can find downloadable guides, online resources, tools, advice and activities to plan your career pathway and to meet your career needs. There is, for example, a career planning guide to help map out that pathway to success. And there's also Opportunity Hub, where you can find many opportunities and also book onto one of our workshops. Some of those workshops include, for example, CV 360 and Interview 360 to improve your curriculum vitae, but also to practice your interview techniques using artificial intelligence. And you can also contact and book a session with one of our careers consultants there through the Law Employability and Careers Services. So, and a note on that, OU students and alumni can book an opportunity to consult with one of our careers consultants anytime for up to 3 years after your graduation. You can access our tools, our resources, our events, and our consultations. Just go on over to the career site and find what you need, make an appointment to speak with a careers consultant. There's also a number of further resources that are listed here on the left hand of the slide, so you can clarify your goals using the 3-minute careers check-in, build your future with career confidence, and navigate your future activity pathway. So lots of resources in addition to the Bringing Law to Life sessions. And if there aren't any further questions emerging in our question and answer pod, it just really remains for me to ask you to fill out our participant feedback form. If you've enjoyed this series of Bringing Law to Life, please do provide your feedback. And I've also posted the link to this in our Q&A chat pod. Denis, do you want to come on the microphone again?
Yes, indeed. Sorry, Juanette, just if I might make one point in relation to CVs, and going back to the point I made about, AI producing CVs. What you want are verbs in your CVs. Companies that get CVs, they're full of adjectives. I'm self-motivated, I'm driven, I'm results focused, and all those kind of words are meaningless. What you need are I achieved, I delivered, I did. That's the type of language that you need to need. And the other top tip is to focus on the cover letter. CVs tend to be a little bit formulaic now, so if you want to stand out, you need to put something in your cover letter that makes you stand out from the group. There, I just want to add those 2 points, a couple of thoughts that I've come across because I've been working on CVs with my nephew actually at the moment. So I think there are two takeaways I'd just like to impart.
Thank you, Denis. That's a small thing, but it's an absolutely vital thing in the CVs, talking about what you have done, your accomplishments and your achievements, the tasks that you have done, the responsibilities that you've undertaken. Thank you so much, Denis, for adding those important points. There are things that AI can't necessarily do for you. Are there any other questions for Denis this evening? You can pop them in the Q&A pod, or you can come on the microphone. You can raise your hand.
Have I shocked everybody into silence by putting out too much information?
Not at all, Denis, but you've been very thorough and enormously helpful. I'll just check that pod one more time. So if you do have any questions for Denis that you think of later, you can pop them also in the thread on the forum that you can find on Law Study Home. So if you have any other questions for Denis about a career in law, tips for writing your CVs, finding mentors, finding those opportunities, I'm sure that Denis and the rest of the team will be happy to continue to share their knowledge with you. So that remains for me once again to thank Denis for coming on board to share his story. Denis, we're just so privileged, not only that you've come to share your journey here, but that you're coming to teach and constantly to give back and to continue a very long conversation. So thank you to Denis. Thank you to Rebecca for such wonderful hosting. And thank you to the audience. Thank you for sharing your feedback. Thank you for saying hello and good evening to Denis and letting us know where you are, Stella, in your career journey and your law school journey. Congratulations to you once again. And without further ado, I'll bid all the rest of you good evening. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks, Juanette. Thanks, Denis.
Thank you.